All right, you tell me, how many conversations do you walk out of either one-on-one or with your team and it didn't produce anything? There is someone around the table who, as the team is talking about the table, they're the one banging on the table. No, I'm right. In the conversational intelligence world, we call it the addiction of being right. I'm right. But what we now know is that person, when that person is doing it, if there's 9 other people around the table, there's 9 other brains in the room who interpret that as, I can't trust this person. It's not safe for me to speak up, so I'm not saying anything. We can help people take a look at, if you're going to be in conversations, given the importance of your work, don't you want them to be productive? And productive is some version of win-win, I guess, or the team problem solves together or innovates together.
Let's repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings. I'm really excited today because I have one of my former guests, Keith Greer, who is an executive coach and focusing on leadership development. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's it.
And when you were last on this podcast, or I don't know the exact recording date, but it posted on January 13th, 2020.
Okay.
So that was 6 years almost to the day.
All right.
Because we are recording this on January 19th, 2026.
Well, because this has become such a way I look at the world now, that was 2 grandsons ago. So had one grandson born in 2019, next one came in 21, and the next one came in 24. So
wow,
got 3 little guys running around now. Yeah.
So has that been kind of like the focus of your life?
That's
now?
a lot right now. So we're my wife and I are very blessed. In our closest group of friends, we are truly the only ones who do not have either a child or grandchildren far away. Both of our children and their spouses settled here in the Rochester area. The boys are in East Rochester, and we watch them. So we have them in some shape or form pretty much every day, Monday through Friday. I'm the bus driver because East Rochester is a walking district, so I get them to school, pick them up in between, see clients. The baby is with Carol all day. So people ask me about it all the time of what it's like making this commitment to watching them every day.
Yeah.
And my best answer is about 98% of the time, it's amazing. I mean, we're blessed to have them in our life, to see them every day, to be a significant part of their lives. Like 2% of the time, I think, all right, this wasn't exactly what we had envisioned we're 66 at this time in our life, this level of commitment, but it's really cool. It's very cool.
That's awesome. I think about when my kids were very young, and we were living in Florida for a short time, and my parents, my mom and my grandmother at the time watched the kids 2 days out of the week. So at that time, I was the kind of the breadwinner.
Right.
And it's been a long time since I've been a breadwinner, trust me. But my wife was working 2 days a week back then when we lived in Florida.
Right.
So it was really cool to have them with my mom. And then we moved back up here. So like I can get how that is when you're not, because my kids, they really don't know my parents too well.
Right.
And that,
right.
It's not great. I mean, I love living here. I think it's the best decision that I ever made was to move back here and live here. But, you're 100% correct to say that you're blessed to have your kids and their families close by.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people who are, distant.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Again, we see it in our friends group of, traveling to see grandchildren, or we have a couple of close friends who just within the last year had their first grandchild. Now one is on Long Island, so not like across the country, but still far enough away.
Yeah.
But one is in Syracuse, which isn't very far away, but it's far away enough that
you can't just pop over there.
You can't just pop over.
Yeah.
And so again, having them 15 minutes away and knowing that they are with us every day, it's just, and the grandpa thing, oh my God, what a gig it is.
So here's the question for you, because I'm not near grandpa. Well, technically I could be, but I don't want to think about that. So as a grandfather, comparing that to as a father.
Yeah.
Now, you let the little ones get away with way more than you would have let your own kids get away, or is there a completely different?
So it's just different. I don't even think of it that way of like we let them get away because or
it's just managing. I don't know.
Look, bottom line is we're love and fun. End of discussion. Right? Like that's it. And as a parent, you're love and fun, but you're a whole lot more.
Yeah.
We're love and fun. Now, I will say one of the differences, I think, in having them every day versus we see them, like there are other set of grandparents who are in Canandaigua. They see them, on the weekend. One of the differences I do think is because they're with us every day, we probably are involved a little bit more in the parenting,
and disciplinary
quote unquote,
type of stuff.
Because they're with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even that, it's different. So, we know that 4:00 every day is going to hit. Their mom is going to come and pick them up. They go home. we have a bit of an unwritten rule with, this is my son and daughter-in-law. We have a bit of an unwritten rule with them that weekends and school breaks, we don't see them. Like that is our time.
That's fair.
A school break, we might, like over the holidays, we saw them
sure
for Hanukkah and for Christmas, and we'll do a sleepover maybe or something like that. But weekends, very much. They leave Friday, Saturday and Sunday are ours to recover and do our thing. My daughter-in-law is a teacher, so we don't have them over the summer, which is also nice. But yeah, even though there's a little bit more to the parenting piece because of how often they're with us, it's love and fun. It's love and fun. You go home at 4:00, see mom and dad kind of do the mom and dad thing, and we just get to hang out.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's the consensus is that you get to have your have the kids and then you get to send them back home.
Yeah, no, it's the best. It's the best. It's just the best. So, like I said, we're pretty blessed.
And so coordinating that with what you do for a profession.
Yeah, it is. Luckily what I do professionally, it at this point in my life is not full-time hours. And I, even if they weren't in our lives, I wouldn't want it to be full-time hours. So I get the boys to school. Remy's in kindergarten, Atlas is in preschool, but East Rochester's preschool.
Cool
they have
names.
full day
Remy
preschool.
and Atlas?
Remington, Atlas, and Beckham.
Wow.
Are the three.
Those are great names.
Mom and Dad came up with some cool names. So East Rochester has a full day preschool that's in the elementary school. So I drop the boys off at school somewhere kind of 8:15, 8:30-ish. I go off, I see some clients. I have to be back at school at 1:30 to pick up the one in preschool, and then the older one walks out a little bit after 2. So in between, I have this time to go see some folks. And I can have a week where every day I'm seeing somebody. Like this week coming up, I don't really have much of anything. And I like that. When I retired from the full-time gig at school 2017, I knew I wasn't ready to retire. Had this coaching business going. I've grown it some, but I've never wanted it to be full-time. So another place where I'm blessed, I get to be very choosy about my clients. There better be great evidence I'm going to have fun.
Yeah.
And if there is, we'll do some work together. And the work has become, it's always been, I've been blessed through my career, but very meaningful to me, the work that I do. and seems to resonate with my clients, and people pay my bill, which is good. And so yeah, for right now, pretty good.
So walk me through like what a typical, like who's your typical client, if you have a typical client?
Yeah, so
like,
I have, so it's interesting. When I started my coach training, which is 20-ish years ago, so first half of my career was more traditional clinical world, family therapist, then went off and got all this training and coaching. I remember in coaching, in one of my first coaching classes, and when they started talking about the business aspect of coaching, that you need to find a niche. Like instead of going out there and saying, I coach everybody, it's a bit counterintuitive, but you probably have a better chance of building a successful business if you say, there's this very specific population of people that I'm kind of the expert to work on.
Right.
I have to say that I did my best to not do that. And yet it proved to be very true. So at first, I coached all different kinds of, life coaching and wellness coaching. And the last thing in the world I ever envisioned at that time was any kind of executive coaching. It just wasn't something I thought I'd be interested in, wasn't on my radar. 98% of the people I was in coach school with, that's where they were going. And then,
so they're like coaching CEOs and
it could be anything in the work
people.
world, leaders within companies, different levels of leadership, corporate world, not-for-profit world, family-owned business world. So 12 years ago, I had this gentleman walk into my office at the time. And to this day, I don't remember how he even got to me, how he got my name, because his company had never heard of me at that time. And he was an engineer in a techie company in our area. Brilliant. Pretty close to losing his job because he really sucked with people. And we did some work for about a year, and it went well, and he is still at the company. And after that, the company came to me and said, okay, we have a lot of folks like that. And they were growing and had a need for an increasing level of people in leadership. And there's a very interesting phenomena in the world of leadership, and this is across industries. And that is, so I'll use a company like this as an example. I'm a brilliant engineer, and my company looks at me and says, oh, well, Keith's a brilliant engineer, technically, knows his stuff.
Teach people.
He could lead a team
Right.
of technically brilliant people.
Right.
And nothing could be further from the truth. And, what I've learned over the years is how, and this is very much a bias of mine and guides a lot of my work, that there, again, across industries, is such a lack of appreciation for leadership as a distinct skill set. And that not everyone has it. Like a lot of other skills, it comes a little bit more naturally to some, can be taught. But that assumption that anybody can do leadership is alive and well all over the place. And it proves time and time again to not be true. And all we need to do is think about, all of us know an assortment of people who have any number of stories of working for people who sucked at being a boss, quote unquote. We also know from the research that's why people leave positions in companies. It's rarely does it have anything to do with compensation. It has to do with, it's usually verbalized as I didn't feel appreciated and valued. And so that's my gig. And now I am firmly in the corporate world, the not-for-profit world, and with the family therapy background, and this truly fell in my lap. Well, it's really been a lot of fun, continues to be a lot of fun, family-owned businesses. So you want to talk about that intersection of good business practices and our family shit. It is a fascinating place to work. I was just in a conversation last week with a family business I'm working with, and just talking dad, son, daughter, daughter's husband are the four owners, and talking with the son and daughter of what it's like for them at times working with a partner who's also been your dad your whole life. And
it's just like two completely different dynamics there. Because I know in my past, is like there's ways that I would deal with someone at work, and I would never consider talking that way. It's got to be weird to.
It's very weird.
You got to flip a switch.
It's very weird. It's very weird. And so there is. So I have, I don't know. I think I'm on my 6th or 7th family-owned business now. To make the niche even nichier, most of it has been in the agriculture world. So family-owned dairy farms, a family-owned egg farm, one of the largest producers of eggs in the Northeast. And wonderful, wonderful people have built very successful businesses if you just look at the financial aspect. But definitely, kind of bottom line is they call me in because we have trouble talking with each other. We have trouble dealing with conflict. We have trouble making decisions. And so it is this really cool place for me to bring together a lot of what I've done over, what's now pretty much a 40-plus year career of more of some of the clinical world. So I call myself an executive coach. I don't think of myself professionally anymore as a family therapist, but I would be lying if I said that the family therapy voice is not often alive and well in my work, and not just with the family-owned businesses, because I've gotten to the point where I even look at doing any kind of leadership development. So this is, again, a bias of mine. I do not know how you do leadership development with people without asking them to really focus on their level of self-awareness.
Yes.
Because I do believe that leaders who find themselves in a jam, very rarely is the jam because they don't have some technical piece of information. The jam is some piece of the complexity of you as a human being, me as a human being. You throw in hierarchy, you throw in power dynamic because I'm, now the boss. That brings up so much stuff for people that is usually based in family of origin. And so even there, I was a little shy about it at first when I started doing this work, and now I'm not shy about it at all. If you're going to work with me, there's going to be some pretty significant focus on personal awareness.
Yeah.
And that usually means looking at your stuff.
It's like you bring a big mirror with you.
Got to, right?
Yep.
Got to. So it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. I find it meaningful to be involved in a conversation that I hope makes work better for people, so that it is not just a place where you earn your compensation. And I don't minimize compensation. We all have bills to pay, but that people can go off and feel that the person I work for, again, values and appreciates me, and I know that. Or, I've been in enough of these conversations with people in leadership positions who, have said to me in great confidence, I hate it, or I don't think I'm good at it, or I don't think I'm good at it, but I'm afraid to say that because I think they expect me to be good at it. So now I'm not getting the support I need to maybe grow into the position. And I like being a part of that because we all spend a whole lot of time at work. Yeah. And most of us, somewhere in our lives, will work for somebody. And when you look at, again, the general research of how satisfied people are, if in their jobs, it's not good. Across industries, no specific industry. And that lack of satisfaction is usually related to, the relationship aspect of work.
The way I lead, and I'm like not by any means like a fantastic leader or anything like that. I'm still learning. The self-awareness piece is something I've been working on for the last year.
Yeah.
That I've become very self-aware, and I'm trying to continue with that. It's so important. I
Yes.
can't stress it enough. But there was a job that one of my first real professional jobs, I model how I lead based on the opposite of what he did. So
Right.
I'm like, what would he do in this situation? Well, I'm going to do the exact opposite because that's probably the right thing.
The right thing.
Because it was so bad.
Yes.
It was just so terrible. It was like one of the leaders that lead by fear and
it's horrible.
and retribution and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, someone who, perfect example. Yeah, I need to take Friday off because I got a doctor's appointment. All right, well then you're going to work the weekend, right?
Yeah, right.
Why? Because I'm taking Friday out. Well, you gotta overcompensate for the freedom I'm giving you by getting Friday off. It's like, I'm going to the doctor.
Yeah.
Not having fun.
The narratives that are they're changing, but they're still alive and well of how to motivate people. So, one of the things I talk about with leaders is I believe when you look at the research, there is no evidence that I see that it's actually even possible to motivate another human being. Motivation comes from within for us. Now, can I, in a leadership role, interact with people on my team in a way that helps them find their motivation? Yes. And in fact, in the clinical world, although it has now made its way into the work world, there's a modality called motivational interviewing, which is an entire way of interacting with someone to help them discover what they would be motivated to do. It was created mostly to work with folks in the addiction world. It is now, you find it all over the place, and just finished a book on how to bring it into the workplace. So let's say I have someone on my team at work who keeps coming to work late. All right, so the person in leadership, and it still goes on because I hear this all the time from leaders, well, I'm told from above, I'm supposed to be able to motivate them to come to work on time. You tell me how well that's working. Versus interacting with them in a way that gets curious with them in where they are motivated to make a change in their own behavior. Now, the challenge of that sometimes is they might be motivated to change or not change something that you would like them to change or not change.
Right.
Also, in the workplace, it does not mean if I say, well, I'm not motivated to come to work on time. Well, it is the workplace, and there are some expectations that you will show up to work on time. So, I don't know, maybe you put your employment at risk, but that's your choice. At the very least, I do not believe that you can inject that person with motivation. To your point, what we definitely know is helping people move forward. The strategy that has been taught to leaders forever and ever and ever, which is somewhat what you were describing a moment ago of convince, coerce, control, tell, sell, yell. There is no evidence that has ever worked. But it's what leaders were taught. In addition to, you're responsible to motivate people. And so this is what we do. A lot of my work is built on a foundation of a modality called Conversational Intelligence, which was created by this brilliant woman by the name of Judith Glaser. And what CIQ looks at is how certain conversational patterns and strategies, when used with another human being, cause that other human being's brain to either say, I trust you or I don't. And most of what has been taught in the leadership world causes people's brains to say, I don't trust you, I don't feel valued, I don't feel appreciated, you don't see strength in me. Thinking that people are going to get motivated by you always pointing out what they're not doing well, there's no evidence that works at all versus being very strength-based with people. And so now in my work and other people use it as well, we can sit with leaders and it is no longer just a touchy-feely conversation. Oh, you should be nicer to your employees. Now it is plain old neuroscience. All right, I will show you.
It's about time.
The neuroscientific evidence that if you interact with your team this way, this is probably what you're going to get. And this is what's going to be going on in their heads versus how you relationship build and see strength in people and voice appreciation and value and think ahead of time of what do I need to do in my specific relationship with Scott for he and I to develop a level of trust and safety, or we're going nowhere. And that is, being able to walk into companies now, and it's not just this social worky, that's how I know people see it sometimes. It's not just this social worky thing. No, hard science. Hard science. You want to argue with the science? Go ahead. But there is no question about what goes on in people's brains based on the specifics of how other people interact with them.
And that's why a lot of these really, really big, like Fortune 500 companies are putting so much money into training.
Yes.
Because they're recognizing and they're seeing the results of this happening.
Yes.
And
yeah.
it's like, this is clearly working, so let's
do it. Because Judith used to always say, I had the privilege to train with her about 10 years ago before she passed away. She always used to say that her belief was that, especially in the workplace, I think this is probably true around the Thanksgiving table, 9 out of 10 conversations miss the mark. Right? 9 out of 10 conversations in the workplace do not produce what one or both people wanted, and that is based in because we don't spend any amount of time thinking about what strategies do we want to engage in the conversational world that increase the chances you and I are going to connect. If we connect, we will problem solve well. We will deal with conflict well. We will both feel valued and appreciated. If we connect, we will co-create, come up with an answer that is a portion of you and I, which is much greater than either you or I. We don't do that. And so it's always interesting because in my work, I often hear from folks I work with, well, Keith, all these strategies you have sound great, but I think they're going to just take too much time. And we don't have time because our days are busy. And again, because I've gotten really direct about it, it's all right, you tell me. How many conversations do you walk out of either one-on-one or with your team and it didn't produce anything? And that could be anything from people entered the room with different ideas about what the goal of the conversation was or the role in the conversation, or one of the biggest dynamics you will run into on teams is there is someone around the table who, as the team is talking about the table, they're the one banging on the table. No, I'm right. So in the conversational intelligence world, we call it the addiction of being right. I'm right. But what we now know is that person, when that person is doing it, if there's 9 other people around the table, there's 9 other brains in the room who interpret that as, I can't trust this person. It's not safe for me to speak up, so I'm not saying anything. We can address that now. We can help people take a look, if you're going to be in conversations, given the importance of your work, don't you want them to be productive? And productive is some version of win-win, I guess, or the team problem solves together or innovates together. But it's not happening in most workplaces.
Now, for the small business, for the mom and pops who you also work with, what do you do to get them going, to get them to, do you have like an introductory kind of like, look, try this and you're going to see what I'm talking about?
So the first thing I do is I ask lots of questions. I get curious about what their experiences are when they come together and have conversation. What is or isn't working. And again, what I often hear across my clients is I don't feel heard, or, we sit down to solve a problem and the conversation goes nowhere, or we get stuck in that addiction of being right. I'm right, I'm right, you're wrong dynamic, which goes nowhere. And so it's not difficult I don't find it very difficult to help people pretty quickly be able to identify what's not working. It's also really important to identify what is, right? So what are the strengths around the table that do seem to be working? What when there is evidence that the conversation is productive, maybe what are you guys doing differently at that moment? So we talk about all of that. And what I am able to do is I am able to give some examples that most people can relate to that highlight this issue of what happens when there's not trust and safety in the room. So here's an example. So I will say to a leader, all right, you're up in front of your team, or, I might be working with an entire team. The team gets pulled into a conference room. The leader of the team is up in front of the room, sharing with great excitement about some new initiative that's coming down the pike and what it means for this team and for the company. And it might mean some extra time and energy. But man, we're going to do it, and it's great. And around the table, there's a bit of, an excited murmur. Oh yeah, boss, that sounds really good. Yeah, we're really in, but sounds good. Meeting ends. What conversations take place in the next few days?
He's crazy. What is he talking about?
Right. The water cooler conversations, right?
Yeah.
Smaller groups of people. Tenor is not so positive. He's crazy. What is he talking about? Nobody asked me. I have more than enough on my plate right now. I can't take this on. And so then I would ask whoever, my audience is, what is your best explanation for the water cooler conversations? And the most obvious explanation is there wasn't enough trust in the room for people to speak their truth. So they didn't. I would then say that was a wasted conversation. If you spent an hour in that conference room, that was a waste of time. Versus taking 15 minutes, and there's a variety of exercises and strategies that I can share with leaders and teams to put some things in place that identify. I call it now the conversation about the conversation. What strategies do we want to use that will increase the chances when we start talking about business, it's going to be productive? As soon as you give that example of the water cooler conversation, everyone starts laughing because everyone's dealt with that. Or I might say, all right, I want you to think about the last time you were in a conversation with someone at work. Conversation went to shit, went right down the tubes. You walked away spitting and sputtering, all pissed off at each other. If I walked up to either one of you right at that moment and I said, okay, right now, give me your best explanation for why what just happened, what would y'all tell me? Well, the other person's an asshole. Right. Okay. Tell me how well that explanation moves the next conversation forward.
Right.
Because you're going to walk back into that room. It could be 6 months later. Our memory of uncomfortable emotion is greater than our memory of positive emotion. And you're going to remember that conversation, or you won't remember the words. You'll remember the feeling.
The feeling, yeah.
And there's Scott again. He's going to be a jerk again. But so how about we come up with a better explanation that is much more scientific, right? That is based in neuroscience. People get it. Like, people get when you identify it and describe it of any dynamic where they do not feel appreciated and valued, where they do not feel heard, listened to, people get it. It's just, we experience it and we haven't been given permission to think about it and to then engage with my team in conversation in how to make this different.
How do you deal with the scoffers? Because there's always going to be a scoffer that goes, oh, enough with this bleeding heart shit. Oh, wah, my feelings, wah.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be somebody
always going to be there. Yeah, I don't know. I find giving some real life examples makes it really hard to scoff at it.
Yeah.
I think. Being able to lead with neuroscience makes it really hard to scoff at it. And yet those folks are out there because
science schmience.
Yeah, science schmience. Look, here's what I think sometimes this is very much a bias. And a bit on the judgmental side. I think what sometimes empowers scoffing is self-awareness is not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard work.
Nobody likes to have that magnifying glass on themselves.
It's courageous work. It's vulnerable work.
Yep.
And so, I sometimes get curious when I run into scoffing, if that's a little bit of what's behind there. And look, I run into it and I do my best to put on my best coach hat and get curious with people. Help me understand where you're at. Help me understand what we're talking about here that doesn't land for you.
And I think that approach is so useful in so many different situations. That whole idea of help me understand this position that you're taking.
Yes.
And not the why do you feel that way?
No.
But help me to understand.
Right.
Because you're joining them where they're at. You want to be there with them so that you can converse better. And it just, I think it helps de-escalate.
Yes. Look, even that person, I do believe, if someone asks me all right, Keith, in your work of all you do, of every idea I might have, suggestion I might have, strategy I might have that increases the productivity of conversation. If you had to give one, what would it be? And it's so easy. Listen. Shut your damn mouth and listen. We, as human beings, have a monumental need to be listened to, legitimately, sincerely, authentically listened to. Not listened to and you can tell I'm just waiting for you to stop talking so I can jump in and tell you what to do. Not listen to yeah, I am asking you questions, but it still feels like my questions are pushing you in the direction I want you to go in. Listen to. So with that person, my experience would be that person who's scoffing at it, they're waiting for me to say, you don't know what you're talking about, right? And now we're in a pissing match, right? Now we're just, I think, we're pushing against push versus tell me. Oh, okay. You see it that way. Tell me more. Oh, yeah, I hear you. Explain a little bit more. Oh, okay. What about all of this do you think would be really important for me to know? If you listen well, people, one, feel heard, and not all the time. You might find that once the person says what they need to say, maybe they're a little bit open to now doing a little bit of listening on their side. So that person who's scoffing, I listen, I validate, because this is their perspective. Who am I to argue with it? Get to a point where maybe it feels like, all right, some of the energy behind this is crazy is now dissipated. And now I can say, all right, I really appreciate that. You tell me, how open are you right now to maybe just hearing a different way to look at it? Now, if they say to me, I'm not open, I have to honor that. Okay, cool. Conversation's done. But what I find is if you listen and you listen and you listen, people sometimes, okay, well, this dude listened to me, didn't push back, isn't pushing their opinion, actually even asked permission to share their opinion. All right, maybe I'll listen.
So it could be that person's coming from a very deep-seated feeling that they've never been listened to, that they've never been treated with respect in their own. Yeah.
Yeah. Look around our world right now.
Do I have to?
Oh my God. Right. It is impossible to have conversations with people right now. People don't want to share anything about what they believe, what they think, what their political affiliations are out of fear of where that conversation is going. To this day, I am never shy in conversation about the fact that I lean to the left politically and value-wise. I don't feel a need to be shy about that if I'm also willing, if I find myself in a conversation with someone who views the world differently, if I'm willing to listen. Because I do believe with every fiber of my being, and we see the evidence out there, that me yelling at you and telling you you're a horrible person, waiting for you to say, oh my God, Keith, thank you. I'm going to change my worldview. I had this opportunity a couple of months ago. I was invited to speak at a conference, and I got to the place where the conference was the night before, and I'm sitting at dinner with some of the people who coordinated the conference. And I meet this really nice gentleman, and we just, strike up a conversation, and you do what you do in conversation. We're kind of talking about who we are and what we do in our family. It became pretty clear relatively quickly that we probably see the world differently, right? From a value standpoint, from politics, who we probably voted for, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, I could feel, Scott, in me, I could feel that old way of thinking, which is I'm going to and that, dude, stop. Practice what you preach. Because he seemed like a very nice guy. And we had this conversation, and we did land on a topic had to do with the LGBTQ community, and it was clear we see it differently. And I just thought, because one of the things that I think a lot about, I struggle with through this present moment in time, is how to model being the person I want the world to be. Because I feel my feelings deeply. I feel my perspectives deeply. I feel my opinions incredibly deeply. I think there's some stuff going on in our world right now that is horrible, 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 horrible. I feel all of that deeply. I just have really come to believe that yelling at somebody does nothing. So I heard this go on inside me. Keith, just listen. Just listen to this guy. Ask questions. So in the conversational intelligence world, there's a concept called asking questions for which you have no answer. Not leading questions. Questions that are truly based in curiosity. Like, I want to know more about how you see the world. And there is a part of me, Scott, that I look at some of the people kind of on the other side of the political spectrum, and when I can be in a good place, I am truly curious because they see the world so freaking differently than me.
Yeah.
And again, I know if I walk up to them and you need to see the world the way I do, it goes nowhere. And so I just started asking a lot of questions. And I could tell he was waiting for me to push.
Pounce. Yeah.
And I didn't. And he calmed. Like there was some energy there at first, and then he calmed because I kept asking questions. Tell me more about it. Oh, yeah. Okay. So how do you see the world? Yeah, and because what also became very apparent, he loves his children just as much as I love mine. There probably wasn't any conversation we could have that night that would cause either he nor I to fundamentally change our worldview about it.
Sure.
But we had this really cool conversation, and we were able to joke a little bit towards the end of how nice it was to have a conversation with someone when there's probably some real big differences in how we see the world. And neither one of us changed our fundamental worldview, but it felt a hell of a lot better than either one of us trying to push our opinion. There is no evidence in the world of neuroscience and brain science that any strategy of pushing my opinion, convincing somebody else, debating them the way we act, and it never works. Another example of where we can go with this. So I was at, it was a couple of months ago, was the last really big No Kings rally in our area. So I was at 12 Corners in Brighton with my congregation, friends, not shy about that, how I see the world and how I see our present government. And we're there and we're enjoying each other's company and we're holding signs and we're doing our best to say to the universe, here's how we see the world. So 12 Corners. So a car comes up, red light. I don't know why someone thinks about doing this, but the woman in the passenger seat rolls down her window and starts F-bombing all of us. So what do some of my good friends do? They start F-bombing her.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, here is a perfect example. Standing out there protesting for what I believe is important, what represents my values, I'm very comfortable doing. That conversation, what a waste of time.
Right.
Waste of time. Goes nowhere, does nothing, deepens our hate and dislike of each other. It's better just not to have that conversation, right? Versus trying to do it and trying to push an opinion.
And I think getting that message across to people that push is not going to get you anywhere. It's such an important message, but just it's one that nobody really hear. And I think it's just because they're so emotional and it feels good when you go, Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And there's brain chemistry to support that. Yeah,
so that addiction of being right, I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm right. In that moment, your brain actually gives you a little shot of dopamine.
Yeah.
It feels good to be in that, I call it that righteous sense of rightness.
Yeah.
I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And again, don't get me wrong. I feel my beliefs deeply. Mm-hmm. I just have come to believe that if I'm going to be in a conversation with someone, can we attempt to do the conversation differently, or don't have a conversation? So, the other place all of this stuff works is around the Thanksgiving dinner table or the Christmas dinner table when you're with family. And I have a family member who sees the world very differently than I do. And I love him. He sees the world very differently than I do. There are ways to do those conversations or choose not to have them.
That's exactly how I do it. If we're not going to do it in a way that I believe is respect, I try very hard to be respectful.
Right.
The problem where I run into the problem when I believe that I'm being given misinformation. And that's when I'm like, and that's usually where it stops. It's like, well, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this because I don't believe that the information you're giving me is actually factual.
Yeah, right.
And you don't believe that the information I'm giving you is factual. So
end it.
How about the weather?
Right. Because anything else, it just goes nowhere. It's a waste of time and energy. It deepens our dislike, potentially, of each other. And so just don't. Just don't.
And what makes me think about when you get into that situation, what happened with the gentleman that you're talking to, and you said, you're pretty sure that he loves his kids as much as you love yours. So then at that point is when you focus on the likenesses. You focus on the shared experiences.
Yes.
What was it like when your son was born? What was it like when you, got married or what was your last vacation? Was that fun? And you try to reduce it down to something where it's like we have these, as human beings, these shared things.
Right.
That we always lose sight of.
We always lose sight of them.
Have you ever seen a movie? There's a movie called Train Dreams.
No.
I highly recommend this movie, Train Dreams. It's set in the early 1900s, and I think it ends up in the 1960s. But it's basically, it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a guy and his life.
Right.
And he works in the Pacific Northwest in the lumber industry, and and his simple life. His very simple life.
Right.
But all of the things that he went through, the ups and downs, the joys and the painful parts that he experienced in his life, we all experience as human beings. We all have those. We all love someone. We all experience loss in some way. We have triumphs. We have failures. All of us throughout the entire world. And it's those things that connect us all. And a lot of times it's those things that we don't see, that we can't see.
And I want to think, and I've been accused of being a Pollyanna most of my life, of, sometimes seeing the world, seeing the, glass is half full, when maybe other people would say I shouldn't, but it works for me. I want to think, even across the political spectrum in our country today, I want to think the majority of people, if given the opportunity to have productive conversation with each other, would find way more middle ground. Are there the two ends of the spectrum? Yes. And then you can get into what's fed to us on social media, which is the two ends of the spectrum. I want to think that, but I just know. So the metaphor I always use, it's a crappy metaphor. It just makes sense in my head. Right, so you and I have very different opinions about something that we feel deeply about, and we sit down to have a conversation. And if we are both coming at that conversation with a push, right? I'm going to convince Scott, you're going to convince me, I'm right, you're wrong. I think of it as almost like a boxing match, right? We're just throwing punches at each other. And as long as I'm sitting here believing you're going to keep trying to punch me, I'm going to just keep throwing punches back. It goes nowhere. What listening does, if I decide I am going to just listen to Scott, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to let him talk. I'm going to quiet my mind. I'm going to quiet, to the best of my ability, my judgment, and I am going to truly listen, because it is so important to me to understand. Again, in the conversational intelligence world, they call it being open to being influenced. Can I sit in a conversation with someone and be open to my mind being changed? I'm going to listen. So to play out that metaphor, what I think about is if I'm listening, I've put my arms down, I'm not throwing any punches, I don't even have them up in a defensive posture. You can only throw punches for so long before you're going to get tired. You're going to get tired.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that emotional energy that we have connected to some of the ways we see it. So if I'm listening, you will calm. It's one of the, back to working with leaders, when we talk about, how do you deal with somebody, when you have to deal with somebody who's upset, right? And this goes to motivational interviewing and some other modalities of just you listen and you reflect. Wow, you're really pissed. Wow, you really, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong. I'm right or wrong. I'm just going to listen. You will calm. And you will calm because I'm not throwing any punches. And you will calm because I'm not pushing. And you will calm because I'm not trying to convince you of my side. If you can do it authentically.
I was going to say
authentically.
Because if you're doing it just to be quiet,
we all have a good bullshit meter.
Off.
Right?
Yeah,
we know when somebody's not being authentic.
It's like if you really honestly want to know, you can.
We read it. Our brain reads it. Right. If I can do that, you will calm. You will get your point across. You'll calm. I'll ask good questions. I'll be curious about you. I'm not telling you wrong. I'm also, and this is an important part because I've had people say this to me, but Keith, if I sit there and I listen, by listening, aren't I kind of agreeing with the person? No, not at all. You're not agreeing and you're not disagreeing.
That's an interesting
You're listening.
idea, yeah.
Because that's often what causes me to now jump back because I don't want you to have any sense that what you're saying to me is right. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm listening. Tell me more. I'm listening.
Fascinating. It's almost like if you don't come up with a rebuttal right away, that person views it as a win. I got to say that, and therefore I win.
So now we're back to win-lose.
Yeah.
Right? Now we're back to that win-lose, which means this conversation's going nowhere.
But again, the more you sit and listen and ask questions, the more they're tired they're going to get about throwing the punches. They're going to get tired of throwing
the punches, and they might be open to, all right, now it's my turn. Can I share a little bit? Now, even if at the end of that conversation, they still don't want to hear what I have to say. Okay, conversation's done. Thanks for sharing that with me. I haven't agreed. I haven't said they're right. I haven't said I'm wrong. I have modeled a way of interacting with another human being that I wish more of the world looked like.
Yeah, I was like, you can walk out of that conversation with your dignity intact and know that, hey, I did the right thing.
Could. And the last piece for me would be, if I do that, maybe I will hear something that will cause me to say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Now, I think that takes great courage to give yourself permission to, maybe you will tell me something that I hadn't looked at it that way.
I always whenever I'm in a conversation like that with someone, I always like to find myself in a position where I go, I didn't think about that way. Because it's first of all, it's very disarming. The other person, they're going to be like, I was expecting a punch and you were like, huh?
That's right.
But once you start doing that, then now you're laying the groundwork for an even maybe a better conversation, a little bit more of an interaction. Maybe not that time, but the next time.
Yes.
Because you're going to remember that emotional memory. Right. Hey, the last time we spoke, I remember it being kind of good. Right. It wasn't so bad. So maybe that'll happen again.
We had about a year ago, we did this program at my synagogue. I can't remember the name of the organization, but it's a national organization that kind of tries to help move in this similar kind of direction of help people with different opinions have productive conversations. So we did this training for a bunch of folks, a bunch of congregants, and and so the training is coming to an end, and it's just kind of a Q&A. And this one woman in my congregation, who's wonderful, I really enjoy her. So she raises her hand. She said, look, okay, so all of this is good, But when do we get to tell people they're wrong? And I thought, there it is, right? That's it. That's the issue in front of us right now. That is the mindset that we all feel so deeply what we feel right now about the state of the world and the state of the United States and the state of the gentleman in the White House. We feel it so deeply that we have to make sure the other side knows they're wrong. And again, I can go to 12 Corners and stand in a No Kings demonstration, and if somebody drove by who knows me, they would know, oh, that's how Keith sees the world. And I'm good with that because I'm not shy about how I see the world. But if we're going to attempt to sit down over a table and have a conversation, then we have to both agree to try and do it based on some different rules and strategies. Or as I said, let's just not even do it.
Yeah, I mean, what a perfect way to end this conversation.
Yeah.
Honestly, the more people that can approach a conversation with that in mind, we might actually be able to get somewhere.
We might.
It's actually ending on a very hopeful note. Because lately
yes.
I've been feeling it's been very dark. I've been feeling like I don't know where the future's headed. And you got grandkids. I have adult children now who eventually may spawn or not. I don't know if the world's ready for those for another generation of Fitzgeralds, but no.
Look, I'm with you. Yeah. I struggle not being like, with that darkness of what is going on in the world. But there's just this part of me that says, all right, what of all of this, what is the part I have any control over? I have control over showing up at 12 Corners and being in a protest that represents values that are important to me. I have control over that. I also have control over yelling at other human beings and judging them harshly. And I could do that. There's nothing I believe anymore that goes anywhere other than it will give me some momentary good feeling that I said what I wanted to say in the way I wanted to say it.
Right.
And so and it's not easy. I do struggle with this, but I just try and come back to, okay, here's the part I have control over. If you and I sit down and have a conversation, we choose to have a conversation together, and the evidence is we see the world differently. If we're going to choose to do that, can we choose to do it in a way that will be more productive, that will potentially bring about some change, that will maybe just give you who sees the world differently than me an experience with someone who sees the world differently than you? That's a good experience, that we don't have to crucify each other to have a conversation, at least attempt to. That's where I keep coming down to. And that being said, Scott, I am very careful who I have conversations with because I don't want to find myself in a conversation that all the evidence to me is it's going to be a waste of time. Right? So let's just not do it.
Time is very precious.
Yes.
Time is very precious. They're not making more of it, just like land.
Yeah, right.
Land and time.
Yeah.
Well, you have the control to subscribe to this podcast and to reach out to Keith Greer if you want Keith to coach your family business, or if you liked anything that he said today, which I would expect that if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you probably agree 1,000% with what Keith is saying. So how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, phone number 585-764-9431. Email Keith at Keith Greer Coaching, or KeithGreerCoaching.com is just a simple website. You can get a hold of me through there.
Perfect. And do you got any bicycle rides across the United States?
So I did my second Empire State ride this past summer. It was a little bit more challenging than the first. Came really close to heat stroke one of the days. It was pretty tough. I'm a little up in the air. I'm registered for the one this summer. My wife and I scheduled a 10-day vacation the first 2 weeks of July, and the ride is the last week of July. So I'm a little ambivalent because I'll miss like 2 weeks of training right before I do it. But leaning towards still doing it again. It's a phenomenal experience. Great people, raise money for who doesn't have somebody they love who has not struggled with cancer or died from cancer. So, and the 540 miles across New York State is a nice challenge.
It was cool watching your videos or your updates. I was like, where is he today?
Yeah. So
incredible stuff.
I think I have to make a decision soon because I have to raise a certain amount of money. But I think if I do enough training before we leave on this vacation, even if I miss 10 days or 2 weeks, I'll be okay. So probably we'll do it again this summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Keith.
Thanks for the invite. This was good to catch up.
Yes. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. You take care.
See ya.